I mean, if you're my age or close to my age, you probably do remember 1989. I was in high school in 1989. We were still living the sort of the tail end of a Cold War era. And, all of the popular movies at that time were about Soviet Union versus the United States. And we were just talking about Mikhail Gorbachev passing away at 91. He was on the news all the time, him and Ronald Reagan. We remember these days. I mean, it was the end of the era, but we still remember these days. But in 1989, something huge happened in China. Now, at the time, China was, of course, also in the news, but not nearly at the scale that it is today. In June 4th of 1989, there was a massacre in Tiananmen Square, which, as far as I know, is the largest public space square on the planet. It's monstrous. It's a huge piece of real estate. And joining us right now in studio is Fung Zhou. He is the president of Humanitarian China, and he is a survivor of Tiananmen Square and one of the student organizers in 1989. Good morning to you, Mr. Fung Zhou.
Good morning.
Thank you for being on with us in the studio today. 1989, kind of a really big moment in your life. What was that like for you? You started protesting in April of that year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I was fortunate to be the first one to protest on Tiananmen Square on the day of April 16, the first day after the death of Hu Yaobang, the former party secretary who was removed because he was believed to be sympathetic to the students' demand for more freedom. And I was last one, among the last to leave Tiananmen Square after the massacre, when the tanks were rolling in, chasing us out. So I experienced the whole process. And for me, this was the first time to experience such a strong call for freedom, democracy, and it was happening like a volcano, but right there on Tiananmen Square. That's the center of China's public arena. And for me, now people talk about it, remember it as a tragedy. But for me, it's also a moment of great hope. Yeah, putting into context, today, I think we are confronting Russia and China. They are both remnants of this communism system. And the protests on Tiananmen Square, it was the first wave of the protests that really, eventually it led to the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe later that year, the fall of Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
But we were part of it, and that was the first wave. Unfortunately, the victory didn't materialize in China, but it definitely triggered the change in Eastern Europe.
Okay, so for one thing that I understand about the student protest in 1989 was there was a wide range of public support for the student protest. All walks, old and young, all came. Military, even police officers were there protesting with you and the other students. Why didn't it succeed? I mean, it seems to me that that's your best chance for success, having that much support, and yet it didn't. And so my next question is it possible for China to have a successful change from communism to something more like a democracy or a republic?
These are good questions. I've been thinking that every day. It's always in my mind. Why, when we were so close, it's almost within reach.
Yeah.
And then, we quickly failed. I think the main answer, of course, is because the nature of communism. It has no regard for human life, even though there was such a consensus from people for democracy. Deng Xiaoping controlled the military, and he was able to mobilize the troops that's remaining loyal to him, and implemented a massacre that really took everyone by surprise. I mean, even Zhao Ziyang, at that time, he was the party secretary. Supposedly, he had the supreme power, but he didn't even realize he was relieved of his position when the martial law was declared.
Wow.
And, he refused to participate.
Wow.
So there's a lot of confusion. Of course, like even for me, I'm knowing more and more about this as time goes on, like the extent of the opposition within the military. I only know that in recent years because someone just came to me with intimate knowledge of this. We had no idea at that time. And so that was the case. There was a very strong public consensus, but there wasn't organizational strength because within the communist system, it's really difficult to form organizations. That's why in the beginning we were following the example of Poland, the Solidarity Union movement. We were trying to form the Solidarity Student Union, but there wasn't such organization for example, in the society. It's very difficult. That's why even though there was such a strong consensus, we could not form.
Let me ask you a question. I'd like you to describe for me what the massacre was like. I know a lot of media censored that information. China really worked hard to censor that, and still does today. Try to censor what information can be found about this. But one of the questions I have is, how is it possible members of the military, Chinese citizens, could fire upon their own citizens who are not armed? They have no guns, and they were firing at them. How, explain that to me. I don't understand how Chinese citizens would shoot their fellow citizens that were unarmed.
Because they were and they are loyal only to the party, and at that time only to Deng Xiaoping, the supreme leader of the military. They were not really a national military. They are not really serving the people. But of course, that's always the propaganda. But it was the first time that Chinese people realized, this military is not really there to protect the people. It's there like an invasion. It's occupying force there. That's why it happened. Of course, there were a lot of brainwashing happening. When Li Peng declared martial law on May 20th, there was such a strong voluntary opposition from ordinary peoples of Beijing that the military couldn't push in. They were all stopped by people who would carry their kids on their shoulders just to tell the soldier, life in Beijing belongs to us. There's no, we don't want you here. That's why they couldn't go on. Then after he withdrew the troops, he put them in concentrated brainwashing for about 2 weeks.
Wow.
That's what happened. And even with this, there was such a strong opposition that the most elite troops, the 38th armed troops that's stationed near Beijing, that was supposed to be like the most elite troop in Beijing, its general was court-martialed.
Oh, wow.
For refusing to follow the order. And that's we didn't know this, of course, only
at the time.
Later. Yeah,
sure.
At that time we had no idea.
Yeah.
How you mentioned that there were people there, the people who were firing at their citizens, that they were loyal to the presence of the military there. What is it like now? Is there still a lot of loyalty to the party as it was before? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it's probably, sadly, even stronger today. Wow. This blind loyalty that's indoctrinated today, like so in the most advanced system of the world, and continuously. I think this is probably in human history. There's never a government who can do that. Basically, control people's thinking at every moment and everywhere, because the most advanced technology enables them to do that.
Yes.
At that time, for a while, all the government-controlled media, they were in support of the student.
Oh, wow.
Even the party's mouthpiece, the People's Daily. If you read it, it's completely on the side of the student. That's why later I think they learned this. Xi Jinping, basically when he first took power in 2012, his first public policy was this kind of freedom of press.
Yeah.
That was the major demand in 1989. Will be something that's forbidden. Like you are not even forbidden. You're not even allowed to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's happening now. There's no real free discourse. There's only indoctrination. This consistent brainwashing.
Yeah, which brings me back to one of the points I asked about a minute ago about if that was your best opportunity in 1989. It seems to me that most of Chinese citizens are accepting the life that they live now in China and don't seem to have a drive for freedom anymore. We have about 30 seconds before we have to go to break. Would you say China's citizens today are just accepting their status, or do you think they still have a desire for freedom? You got about 30 seconds.
I think both are probably true, but from the surface, it's more the first one. So I think there's...
All right, hold that thought.
Thank you for having me.
How many people died at the massacre? There's been conflicting reports.
Right. I think for now, we don't really know. As someone who has been doing this basically all the time since the massacre, every year I would find out new cases. Wow. That's what's happening. But what's more tragic is that there are definitely more cases that will be never unveiled. And I think in a way this is confirmed by Louisa Lim in a book called People's Republic of Amnesia. She talked about this massacre in Chengdu where about 50 people were killed in a hotel, in a luxury hotel that's for foreigners only at that time. So what happens that, there's no local witness, and a few foreigners saw this, and they all wrote down their own observation, but they didn't realize there was someone else watching. So Louisa Lin just put everything together, confirmed there's such a case. Actually, one of the witnesses is Andy Levin. He's a congressman from Michigan now. But I have been in close contact with people from Chengdu, the former student leaders, the Christian House Church there. These are the people who are very open. They've been pursuing this kind of history. Nobody ever heard about this. It's like nothing happened.
Like it never happened.
Never happened. This happened at the the downtown, like the very center of one of the busiest city in China. But like all these people just disappeared. And in Beijing, similar thing happened. Someone, like a sister, her brother died, but the family just had to keep this a secret. Otherwise, the sister cannot marry.
Oh, wow!
Just because of the persecution, the risk, the stigma that's associated with death on this day. I met someone who was actually senior executive at one of the most important tech company there. She came to me just telling me about this story. Her own brother disappeared on that day. And even after she came to United States, she was afraid to talk about this. And only after her both parents died, she came to me. She wants to make it public. Yeah.
Wow.
So think about
her parents were really afraid that if anything got said, it would have a bad ramification.
And not only for this family, it may have repercussions. Even for generations to come.
Wow.
That's the kind of
mind control that the communist government had on the people.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty insane. Now, you were arrested. You were number 5 on the most wanted list, and you did get arrested. How did you get arrested? How did they find you?
I was at my home in Xi'an, actually having dinner with my mother. And for the first time, I saw my name on national TV. Wow. This most wanted list. They were broadcasting it. And I saw myself as number 5. I was really shocked. My mother cried immediately. And her first reaction was trying to seek help so we can escape. And for me, I just realized what I consider my action as the duty of citizen. Now, it's a crime in the eye of this government. But of course, I was also proud of what I have done. I believe that what I have done was something that I think to me that's from my own conscience. That's what I have to do, and that's the and for the country, that's like the best thing that's happened in China since communists took over.
Right.
But of course, I didn't realize this was the beginning of the long journey as a dissident.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you turn yourself in? Did they come to find you? How did they get a hold of you?
The police came, arrested me.
Okay.
I was in prison for a year in Qincheng prison, the high security prison normally reserved for high-ranking government officials.
Wow.
We were there simply because they were running out of space in prison. They arrested so many people. And so when we were in this mountain area in the suburbs of Beijing, and I was handcuffed for 3 months nonstop.
Really?
Yeah. So I always remember, when I wake up at night, because in your dream, your mind is kind of running free. And then when you wake up, the cold reality, you have handcuff on your hands. That's like almost like the first impression I had.
Did you despair at all?
Not really, because I think even when we were in prison, there were about a dozen of us there, mostly students, and there was one professor. so in a way, China at that time, there weren't that many people educated, but in prison, there are a lot of people like us, it's like a college campus.
Solidarity.
So, and even the police, even people who were interrogating me, they knew what I did was honorable. And that's pretty clear. So later, after I was released, facing such pressure from the government that they have to follow the government's line on propaganda on how to see what happened. That was riot, things like that. But
hold that thought. There's so much more I want to ask, but I want to kind of get into Christian persecution in China today while we have time. What is the state of Christians living in China today? Are they allowed to practice their faith? What is it like?
The government controls everything. As you mentioned, even Catholic priests had to swear loyalty to the government. The same is happening to Protestant churches. But I think after 1989, one of the most fundamental change in China was this huge conversion, the wave of conversion into Christianity. That I think that's happening even very strong now today. And many of the church leaders in this wave, they were protesters of 1989. So these closely associated, and my organization, Humanitarian China, we have been supporting persecuted house churches. One of the most famous one is this early rain church in Chengdu. The pastor name is Wang Yi. He was a high school student in 1989. But what happened changed his life. He turned to Christianity later, and he is the most respected house church leader in China now. He's in prison, serving 9 years of prison for sedition, for trying to overthrow the government, because he openly condemn the government for what they are doing against the people. And his church was always open to political dissidents. We have like people who fresh out of prison, nowhere to go, but this is like one place that they can always turn to.
So are Christians being arrested just for practicing their faith, or are they allowed to practice Christianity so long as it does not interfere with their loyalty to the communist government?
Yeah, of course, there must be the loyalty to the communist government at first. So the Xi Jinping is pushing this so-called synodization. He wants to impose this Chinese or communist version on Christianity. Of course, that's rejected by true believers.
I've seen reports where in Catholic churches in China, they have come in and removed the images, the iconography, and they put images of Xi Jinping and communist statements on the wall. Is that true?
Yeah. Of course, that varies, but that's definitely true. Like just last week, there's this famous landmark that's a cathedral in Taiyuan was destroyed. This cathedral, survived like Japanese invasion, the Boxers, all that. But now, at this moment, it's being destructed by Xi Jinping. That's how bad the situation is.
So it seems to me as if, practically speaking, the externals, like the big churches and that sort of thing, that would be something obviously loyal to the party. What does the underground church look like? Is it people in houses or gathering in the cover of darkness? What does that look like?
Because basically independent churches, house churches, are not allowed to own as an organization to own property. So they have to gather like separately, and some of them utilize like Zoom, this kind of online platform to keep gathering. That's what's happening. But there is a very strong desire for Chinese people in this very dark time. People want something that they can have hope. And that's definitely not from the government.
I understand that the sort of the heavy-handedness of the communist government can depend upon the part of China that they're in. I guess it's heavier in some places and lighter in others.
Right. Yeah. There are differences, but for Xi Jinping, he always wants to push harder and harder and harder, and that's why we are seeing increased persecution like every day. So he used to be from Zhejiang, and that's where the burning of the church crosses, like removing church crosses. That's where it happened. Like I think about 5 years ago.
I remember seeing pictures and video of them destroying these churches and tearing down the crosses on the top of the steeples.
Right. That's his territory.
Oh, so he's sending a message there.
Right.
His hometown is going to be cleansed of these Christians. Because we're on a timeline here, I want to get to a couple of other things really quickly. Many of us in the Catholic Church are scandalized by the Vatican-China deal. We are scandalized by reports that Catholic bishops who have been appointed by the communist government are swearing oaths to the communist government. That's very scandalous to us. And then we feel like there's an ongoing persecution of the underground bishops who, in some cases, have been asked to give up their positions as bishops to give way to a communist-appointed bishop. Can you give us any insight on that situation?
Right. Yeah. We know the situation, and I don't think Vatican is doing what it's supposed to do. And for us, we're seeing strength from Catholic Christians like Jimmy Lai, you mentioned.
In Hong Kong,
Zing. These are my friends. There's also a very strong connection of Christianity with Hong Kong's democracy and the Tiananmen. So for us, these are our people, and these are our brothers, sisters, and these are the people we care. We must raise our voice for them.
George Weigel said, quote, "The Vatican megaphone was once something to be reckoned with. Its power is fading from disuse," close quote. That's George Weigel, coming from an article over at First Things. Why? Help me understand why. Why would these Christians give their loyalty to communist government in opposition to their fidelity to Christ and to his church? I really can't wrap my head around this. Are these bishops, they're just party members? I mean, like, how do I understand these people? Do we see them as Christians, or do we see them as just party members appointed to oversee?
I think, of course, they are definitely party members, even though only probably some of them are public. There are secret party members all the time within the Catholic organizations in China. Yeah, and I think there's one most famous leader, I think, who I think later, like on his death, whatever, he want to be revealed as a communist member.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's definitely the situation. Of course, most people just don't understand how communism is. This is the most inhuman system. Thirst for power and control. It will not tolerate anything that's independent.
Yeah. What do you think We're really down to a couple of minutes here before we have to say goodbye in this segment. But let me ask this question. Let's go to Hong Kong here and Jimmy Lai and Cardinal Zen. What do you think their future is going to look like? Do you think Cardinal Zen will end up in prison?
I hope not. He's very old in his advanced age.
Yeah.
And he's in good spirit and a good health. He has been a beacon of faith and love. He's well respected by Hong Kongers and Chinese dissidents.
And he has not received the support he needs from the Pope or the Vatican.
No, that's a shame.
Yeah.
We should protect him.
It doesn't seem that's the case,
right.
Which is a scandal to most of us. Now, what about Jimmy Lai, a faithful defender? Apple Daily was a great outlet, is no longer anymore. Hong Kong seems to be a lost cause in that regard. Will Jimmy Lai end up in prison forever?
There is a material risk there. Recently, there's a development in his case. He refused to admit to plead guilty, whereas his management they were looking for some kind of leniency. So he is shouldering all the weight of the government persecution. Jimmy Lai, he became politically active after Tiananmen, after 1989. Right?
Wow.
He had a business, a very successful business in China, but he openly condemned Li Peng, calling him son of a bitch. That of course stopped his business. That's how he turned to media.
I see.
But later his Apple Daily, that's a voice, the true voice of Hong Kong people.
And it's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone. Is Hong Kong essentially going to be grafted into the one? We're out of time here. Hold that thought. We didn't get a chance to really chat with you during the program, but we thought we'd maybe chat with you for a minute here. You spend a lot of time raising awareness about what goes on in China, especially among Christians and Catholics. What is your perspective on the current situation there?
This is right now is the lowest point, I think, since 1989 human rights situation. Both Protestants, especially Protestants in China, they're heavily persecuted because they are more active in participating in society than Catholics. What's disappointing is that the Chinese Catholics are not. Many of them are brainwashed. They are less likely to participate in society. So the change of society.
It kind of goes back to something I was asking Mr. Zhou about during the program. Is it even possible today to have another protest on the scale of the Tiananmen Square protests that led to the massacre? It seems like the citizens of China don't really have that in them anymore. It seems like it's been beaten out of them.
I think so. Since 1989, every single year, the situation's getting worse. Fundamentally, now, for example, the COVID policy right now in China, it's 0 case among 1.4 billion population. How do you achieve that with 0 case? That's what the CCP is doing right now. And guess what? Across Shanghai, the city of Shanghai, 0 case policy, and there's no major riot.
And we saw the video of citizens in Shanghai being locked into their apartments, starved, and maltreated. We saw the camps pop up and people being dragged away to them. It's a pretty tragic situation. And also, of course, the treatment of Uyghurs in China. There's been some controversy over that, and there's been a lot of people who deny that's even happening there, that there's organ harvesting going on amongst those people, that there is a repopulation of, I think it's Xinjiang, if I'm correct?
Xinjiang.
That they've been repopulating that area with Han Chinese to offset the Uyghur population there. So there seems to be a lot of atrocities just on a lot of people, not just Christians there. Of course, Falun Gong has been, persecuted heavily there as well. But one of our listening audience members here, Bridget Dunn, says that they give to the Cardinal Kung Foundation. Have you ever heard of the Cardinal Kung Foundation, either one of you?
Yeah, I believe this is the Gong Pinmei. Yeah. He is a famous Catholic believer in China. His foundation, I believe it's...
Was he the one that was made a cardinal while he was in prison, secretly? And then he found out afterwards, and he lived in exile afterwards?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, excuse me, let me correct. It's not a riot in Shanghai. It's a protest. There was not major protest happening.
Yeah.
A riot is just a negative connotation. Okay?
Sure. Yeah.
So for Cardinal Kong, now it's Cardinal Zen, right? Mm-hmm. And remember, 10 years ago, the Bishop of Shanghai, Bishop Ma, openly denounced or renounced the CCP. Yeah. In the Cathedral of Shanghai.
Yeah.
He said, I will not, now you ordained me as a bishop right now, and I will quit my position in CCP.
Yeah.
Immediately, up to today, the whole Diocese of Shanghai cracked down upon. Yeah, frozen.
I still find it very troubling that Cardinal Zen gets to go to, he went to the Vatican, sat in the St. Peter's Square, and couldn't get an audience with His Holiness.
That's most heartbroken among the faithful Chinese Catholics. Most heartbroken.
Yeah.
Even to the point of we feel being betrayed. Imagine the 88-year-old poor Cardinal Zen flew himself across the ocean just to say, Papa, give me 30 minutes. And then waiting there for 4 days in Rome and no response at all.
Yeah.
Jack, let me get your take on that particular situation. Do you think that there's some sort of political agreement? What would be the undercurrent for the Vatican to have a deal with China to create their own bishops? Is there something to their advantage there? Or why would, it seems to me as an outsider again, that it wouldn't make sense for the Vatican to do that, knowing that the communist government is going to create their own bishops that aren't going to follow line with the Catholic faith.
Even the Vatican, I think last month, there was an interview, even the Vatican officially acknowledged that the outcome, the result of the secret deal was not good, was not good enough, they said. I think the Vatican still want to push for that route. They're going to renew the secret deal next month, just right before Cardinal is likely to be imprisoned. Right before that, the major, all the Chinese bishops are summoned just weeks ago, just last week, I think, to sworn the allegiance to CCP, just right before all those. And the Vatican still say we're going to review the secret deal. I think, well, from the goodwill, Vatican still want to push for the normalization of the diplomatic relation between Beijing, and Rome. They want to see especially the number one reason is the ordination of bishops, if that's the goodwill. But from many aspects, they shouldn't do that.
I see.
We have lots of questions here in the chats that are going on right now, and thank you everybody for them. And Adrian, I'm going to ask a question. If you can remember who asked them, then I want to give them that shout out. But here's the question. By the way, Jack, some people are, I think Clarissa is asking about who Jack is. Jackson, the guy in the black shirt over here. Jack's a friend of mine. We've known him for years. He's been working to raise awareness about what goes on in China, especially for Catholics and Christians there. And you run some social media sites, Jack. You want to share those or no?
Yes, I can share. Well, I'm a Chinese. I'm from a Chinese family of six generations of a Catholic faith.
Wow,
Okay, I'm right.
6.
Yes, I'm right now in the.
I'm still working on 1, but okay.
But I want to provide some resources to American friends. I want to say something to American friends. Wake up, China America. China America. China America. America dies in the hand of China. So I beg and urge you to put China issue as your voting priority. And fighting solidarity, appeasement policy, and silent diplomacy proved themselves to fail. And I just some specific resource. You go to if you want to learn the church in China, just go to uscatholicchina.org. uscatholicchina.org. They dialogue with the peaceful dialogue, but they still speak the truth. I serve on, and also Humanitarian China. Just the president is Mr. Fung Zhou, and also go to read the John Paul II, the biography, The Witness to Hope.
Okay, Mr. Fung Zhou, I want to ask you about a couple things. One, I want to get your take really quickly on Taiwan. Do you feel that we're on the precipice? Do you think Xi Jinping will have a military action against Taiwan anytime soon?
Definitely. He is looking for opportunity. They just announced yesterday that the so-called 20th Party Congress will be held in October. I believe there's no doubt he will be permanent leader of the party and
Wow.
the nation. And he wants to see him as like the emperor of 1,000 years. And
He's the new Mao.
yeah, and his crown jewel will be expansion of territory, occupying Taiwan.
Yeah. Because correct me if I am wrong, but as far as I know, the Chinese military has never actually seen combat against another nation at any real scale.
I think there was one probably in Vietnam in 1979, but in recent years they haven't seen. But I think the situation in Taiwan now is that they are quickly building up. I think China is building up more ships probably than the rest of the world combined, more battleships every year. So the balance of power is definitely changing very rapidly.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I think the so-called advantage of this regime is that they don't care about cost. Human cost, casualty, Chinese casualty, Taiwan casualty, or U.S. casualty. They have no regard for human life.
Right.
But they are showing this ambition to do this at any cost. That's what they are claiming to do. We must make it clear that democratic countries led by United States will defend Taiwan at the first moment of any escalation. That's the only way to keep peace there. We cannot be ambiguous on that. So I think the recent development there is definitely troubling. The war in Ukraine, it's a good example. If you have a totalitarian state and with a dictator on top and a nation of crazy followers indoctrinated like that, I think it's much more, what's going on in Russia is nothing compared to what's going on in China. And this comparison, a lot of people were hoping that this Chinese regime would collapse like former Soviet Union. But at this stage, it's more like Nazi Germany before World War II. That's the enemy we are facing.
And America is being told to watch out for Russia all the time. They're like, look over here, Russia, Russia. And yet China is we're letting them do and act in ways that are really not good for the world.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yeah, and the such a regime with global influence through global trade, technology, I think there has never been such a regime, a totalitarian regime with such power concentrated. So we are facing a real challenge. Most people don't realize, it's 10 times larger than Russia. Yeah.
Let's. Here's a question from Kendrickson. He asks, the CCP, are they really changing sacred scripture? So there's been reports that they've been rewriting the Bible, coming out with their own version of the Bible in order to change doctrine, especially on forgiveness of women caught in adultery, as the example Kendrickson brings up. Have you heard reports of the CCP issuing their own version of the Bible?
Yeah, they have been doing this. There's a government monopoly on Bible, and we have seen cases, for example, people being convicted simply for trying to sell Bible. Like
sneaking them into the country.
Right. That's always happening. Bible are not allowed for sale at any other bookstore. Other than the government channels, they are keeping a very tight control on this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kendrickson also asks, what is the best way to resist communist influence in the United States?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think for now their channel is through commerce and investment, and that's where we must start. We must delink, decouple, and think about it. Any trade with China now, we are enabling them to build the most advanced weapons against us.
Yeah,
and we never had it. It's the United States, because of Wall Street, it's turning blind eye, trying to bury the head in sand, trying to avoid this confrontation. But CCP never shy away from their global ambition. It's their ultimate goal to be human engineers of human soul, of everyone on the earth.
Yeah. Let that sink in. They want to be the engineers of the human soul on the earth.
Right.
That's a pretty scary statement, actually.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because you just piqued my curiosity. So before Xi Jinping became the leader, there seemed to be a period of prosperity for China, for the citizens of China, where they were becoming more middle class, buying things that they never imagined, cars and nicer houses and whatever. That all drastically changed under Xi Jinping. It seems like there's been a bit of they were moving towards more of a capitalist society, and Xi Jinping reversed all of that. Do you see it that way?
No. I mean, for me, I think the trajectory of communist China was set, when they rolled the tanks on Tiananmen Square, and they got away with it. The world didn't hold them accountable. United States basically kind of conspired with them because of the benefit of global trade and all that. If you allow the use of tanks against civilians in the capital, and while the world is watching, what else could it do? I mean, there's no limit. Such a regime, and they definitely gained the confidence because of this, because they believe the world is not really caring about the situation in China. And that's why we are seeing this, the persecution of Uyghurs, Tibetans, what's happening in Hong Kong. It's all consistent. Xi Jinping definitely accelerated a little bit, but the trajectory is the same. A lot of, I think, Americans were deceived by Deng Xiaoping. Even the foreign policy circle always call for, returning to Deng Xiaoping, whatever. Deng Xiaoping was the butcher of Tiananmen. He organized the brutal killing of innocent people, and his foreign policy was to wait for your time. And it's not really to be open to changes. That's his policy. So I think it's the same, but Xi Jinping definitely accelerated in talking about the middle class. Recently, there's this billionaire, Xiao Jianhua. He was convicted of embezzling assets and all that. I think he he was a college student as us, but in 1989, he was the government appointed student leaders.
Oh, really?
And he became a billionaire because he colluded with the government during and after the massacre. And he became a billionaire, became part of the circle. Yeah. But all of a sudden, he became a criminal. He was kidnapped from Hong Kong, even though he has a Canadian passport.
Yeah.
Think about that. This is a billionaire with almost 10 billion.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he became a criminal. There's no protection of property, human rights, dignity. That's the situation. Yeah.
Can I ask you a follow-up to that? So are you saying then that the billionaires that live in China or that are Chinese around the world, they are billionaires because of their cooperation with communist government?
Most of them, they have to cooperate. There's zero private enterprise in China. We must understand this. Yeah. Every company eventually will have to serve the state, the communist state. I think most people misunderstood this, thinking that we are dealing with a free market economy.
Yeah.
It's never
been.
Never been. Yeah.
So I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I'm just thinking of, and this comes up quite a bit for us, is a TikTok, the social media site, and its relationship with the Chinese government.
Yes.
Because so what exactly do these foreign softwares, apps, what is their relationship with the communist government?
Well, of course, any such app with CCP connection, they must gather information and report back to Beijing. And that's what's happening. And TikTok, recently we have lots of evidence that they are doing this, which they claim, they were separating this. And most U.S. companies are even following this. For example, Zoom was reporting our commemoration on Zoom, and our account was shut down. And later it turned out, after FBI investigation, that Zoom was hiring a state security agent from CCP.
Wow.
They were paying this guy to give them orders on behalf of CCP.
Wow.
And that's
we use Zoom all the time here.
Right. I mean, but I hope it has changed. But this happened in 2020, when Zoom was gaining its popularity. Yeah. And this actually was the first case of our grievance being investigated by United States. And it uncovered so much. But in the indictment, if you read the indictment, the state security agent actually said that every company with business in China, they have to have this, you have to have a way of talking, following the government's order. That's the reality. Of course, for TikTok, it originated from China. It's much stronger.
Wow. And what about the foreign exchange students? I've heard people talk about how we have to be very careful allowing Chinese foreign exchange students because a lot of times they are not actually foreign exchange students. Instead, they're people who are kind of spying on major universities, things like that. Is that the case?
Yes. Well, this is Jack. We're not talking about racism, okay? But there are the infiltrating power brought by CCP and brought by the many Chinese influx into your country beyond your imagination, okay? In corporate world, in like the Confucius Institute, right? Yeah. Beyond imagination. So another thing is, following that question, American friends, you ask about what you can do. There's another resource that's victimsofcommunism.org. Victimsofcommunism.org, based in D.C. They give great medals to Cardinal Zen and Jimmy Lai. Pay attention to that. And also, John Paul II, his strategy. What's his strategy under the two regimes? Memory battle, cultural resistance, and conscience revolution. Let's follow that. So bring this topic, bring the China topic, bring the communist topic to your church, to your school, to your family.
Yeah.
Yeah, more on the Chinese student situation. It's a very sad situation now because through the CSSAs, the Chinese Student Association here, and because of the pervasive use of apps like WeChat, they are basically strictly controlled by China directly. So that's definitely true. I mean, for us, this because these organized agents of CCP on U.S. campus everywhere. These registered CSSAs, they are 99% associated with the Chinese embassy here. And they take money, they follow their order. For example, none of them, zero. Think about it. There were like 300 Chinese students here. There's zero organization that would welcome me to speak on Tiananmen. Wow. That's the kind of control they are having now.
Speaking of control, Sci-Fi Mike and our Odyssey group asks, is the Chinese government better capable of keeping the population locked down? And I imagine, Sci-Fi, you can correct me, but I'm thinking you mean in comparison to the Tiananmen Square massacre. Is the CCP government better capable now of controlling the population than they were in 1989?
Unfortunately, that's true. We are seeing this dystopian combination of ruthless, brutal regime combined with the most sophisticated, advanced system of monitoring, surveillance, control. They can even forecast, like your next move. That's what's happening now. And for us, I think this is an ultimate challenge. But it's not happening only to China or to Hong Kong. This is a model that's a dream of every dictator. And they want this model to be adopted globally.
Jay Koch brings up, he asks it in a kind of a funny way, but I think it's a good question nonetheless. He says, the bigger question would be, what side would President Joe Biden be on, China or China? I mean, it's a joke here in America, but it seems rather scandalous. I mean, he just recently sold our strategic oil to the tune, I think it was 95 million barrels to China. When our gas prices were at $5 per gallon here, he's giving away our strategic oil. And his son is embroiled in controversy in China and business dealings there. He has rolled back some of the tariffs that President Trump put in place because, as President Trump said many times, and you don't have to love President Trump to realize that we had an unfair deal in trade with China that only benefited China. So it's not right-left politics, it's right-wrong. Why would we support, what would be going on in President Joe Biden's mind that he would think he has to make life as easy as possible for China?
Of course, we are really concerned about this development. I give credit to Trump administration for changing the course of U.S. government's policy on communist China. And they have done something that must take a lot of courage and resolve. And, it's common sense. You're facing an enemy. You're feeding your enemy. How would you do that? But, U.S. is like on drugs. For example, the threat of inflation and all that. That's probably in their mind. I think, of course, like the Trump administration, the Biden administration, current administration, also, put the environment as their top priority. And that's where communist China would refuse to cooperate and use that, as a collateral to kidnap the interest. But this is a regime that it's an evil regime. You cannot trust them on any deal. As I said, the only way out is to confront the link to protect the United States. As to the scandal of Biden family, it's well known, it's well documented that his son gets money from Chinese government
right?
To start so-called venture investing, which in China is basically, that's only for the selected circles. It's
well, from his own email correspondence that's now been leaked, he had direct connections with one of the top spies from the communist government as a part of those business dealings. So he was cooperating with communist government to enrich their family, and it seems very scandalous to us. But you mentioned drugs a minute ago. We're on drugs. We are on drugs. In fact, quite literally, the fentanyl crisis in America that comes across our southern border has its origins in communist China.
Right.
And it's yet another major attack on citizens of America from communist China.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's why we must confront and stay strong, because now they're doing whatever they can to weaken United States. And so one, so I think in their worldview that United States is on the decline and communist China is on the rise. That's why, they have much stronger global ambition than Mao.
That's true. Just to follow up, somebody from our YouTube channel was just curious about what happened to your family after you escaped. Are they okay? Or I know that's a very personal question, but
good. Thank you. I was talking about this. The debt that will not be paid. It's always to my family, to my mother. She died before I came to United States. She was always proud of me. She was raising me. We were very poor and second-class citizen, and all of a sudden, I was like having a very promising career in front of me. I was admitted by Tsinghua University, the top university in China, to study physics, like the most sought-after major. But then I became a dissident. So, she was relying on me for support. But then, I became a dissident. But then she decided that my freedom is more important.
Wow.
So when she was dying, she was actually waiting for me. She couldn't talk. She squeezed my hand, then waved goodbye.
Oh wow.
I just I can never repay her love. But for my siblings, for now, I'm trying to to stay away from them. Sometimes secret police would try to use them to channel some message to me and said, don't say anything that they told me. If you do this, we'll stop talking. So that's what I'm doing now, basically.
I'm so sorry, Jack.
Let me briefly mention. There's another guy, MBA. Okay, MBA like the money in China, but there's one guy called Enes Frieden. Enes Frieden, E-N-E-S, Frieden. Okay, pay attention to him. Also, I'm donating to your radio, Zhou. I'm donating to Zhou's Humanitarian China. That's a real way to support those families.
What's the website to Humanitarian China?
Our website is h-china.org.
Okay.
We are a volunteer organization. We get no pay, but we work full-time globally. We help the political prisoners in China. We have helped over 1,000 cases, and every year we help about 100 to 200. And recently we have been helping the Hong Kong freedom fighters, some of them out of United States, out of Hong Kong, sometimes them still in Hong Kong. So because of our network and the trust, we are able to reach these families of political prisoners.
I'm posting the link in all of our chats right now. In case you want more information or you would like to consider a donation in supporting them, h-china.org. But I posted the links for you so you can make it easier for you. Wow. We're going over time here. I hope you don't mind, because we're just very fascinated by this conversation.
My pleasure.
But one of the questions we are having is, how are you able to get out of China? So you were put in prison for a year. You were, by the grace of God, had an opportunity to be by your mother's side when she passed. How did you get out of China?
It was a long struggle. I was denied a passport for many years. I actually petitioned. I threatened to protest. That they wouldn't give me. I actually asked. I said, I'm a free citizen now. I'm out of prison. Why wouldn't you give me passport? And the answer was because your political position. That's what I was given. But at that time, because the economy was making some progress, so there were lots of opportunities, and I was able to be financially independent because of stock market. I was able to do a lot of things to help other political prisoners. We even published a book called "The Collapse of Communism in Eastern Europe."
Wow!
Yeah, and which was banned immediately. But on the surface, so I was active mostly in business. So after a while, they let me go.
I see. So they thought you were not a threat.
Yeah, at that time, I don't really know, but I was very fortunate to be able to get out of China.
Yeah, and since then you've been living in the United States or abroad?
Mostly in the United States.
Yeah.
Actually, Texas was my first stop. I was in San Antonio.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's Texas.
Yes. It's great.
Praise be to God. Now, okay, so have you, I understand do you have made it back to Hong Kong at least a few times?
I was back to China on 25th anniversary.
Yeah, the umbrella protests.
But that's the same year, two different occasions. I was arrested after visiting Tiananmen Square on the 25th anniversary and sent back.
Yeah.
But then later I went to Hong Kong. I was there during the umbrella movement.
Yeah.
It's there I met Jimmy Lai.
Sure.
Our tents were just like next to each other.
Nice.
So I saw him. I really love this guy. He's like one of the most richest guy there, and he was very famous, influential. But every day he would go there. Sometimes just stay there. There's nothing to do because
hang out.
Yeah, at the time it was a stalemate. So I talked to him and said, what can we do? He said, fight and hope. That's what his words, and that's I think his message today.
He seems very brave.
Yeah.
Not afraid of what will happen to him.
Right. And at that time, a few days after I left, he was physically attacked on that spot. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Right.
I can tell you that the great American Catholic University here in your country, Catholic University of America, they dare to give an honorary degree to Jimmy Lai just weeks ago.
Really?
Okay. And the other one I heard just to deny. So we can't because they take money from the Chinese students or government.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now also Cardinal Zen's passport taken.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I can tell you as a Chinese Catholic, we can tell you. Well, I cannot judge our Pope Francis, but I can tell you the reality is that we Chinese Catholics, oppressed ones, we didn't. Last time we hear any encouragement, any counseling from the Vatican was 15 years ago from Benedict letter, 2007 letter to the Chinese Catholic.
That was the last time.
Last time. And he drew a line of good and evil,
drew
a line of what is not acceptable in that letter.
Yeah. You know, it's a very complicated issue, I imagine, among Chinese Catholics here in the United States, sort of a split fidelity almost, in that how many Chinese Catholics support the Patriotic Church and how many Chinese Catholics support the underground church? Jack, can you give me some idea about that?
You mean those in America?
Yeah, among American Chinese Catholics.
Well, it's hard to say. Those are a real minority population here in your country, the Chinese Catholics.
Right.
And most of them are from origin from Taiwan, Hong Kong.
Is that right?
Yes. And many of them are old. And the old guys means they are brainwashed, mostly.
I see.
Yeah.
So we're going to find very sympathetic Patriotic Church Catholics from among the Chinese population here in America. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I can tell you from my Chinese parish here in America.
Yeah.
Those Taiwanese parishioners, they're good ones, okay? Grandma, grandpa, they're still watching CCTV.
Really?
The CCP program.
Yeah, the communist-controlled programming.
Yes.
That's a problem. That's a real problem. You know, there was, what was the bishop a year and a half, 2 years ago? He was arrested, and he was seen blessing the security cameras because he knew people were watching. What was that bishop? He was arrested. He was, I can't remember his name though, but I thought that was amazing. He was he was confined. He was trying to have an impact upon the very people who were keeping track of him, keeping tabs of him. And I thought that was very inspirational.
Yes. I can also say that I want to appreciate only a few American bishops who speak up for cardinalism, including our Bishop Strickland in Texas.
Yeah, amen. We had him on not all that long ago. He's a great guy. Praise be to God, very outspoken. I think it was Matthew over in Rumble asked about the CCP influence on children and their intellectual formation and education systems. So, the war over the next generation, I think, is where it's happening in America. The current administration is trying to control what the next generation of kids understand about history, about the reality of where they live and the times they live in. They're trying to re-educate them in falsehoods, I would say. What about in China? Is there a lot of propaganda in the education of children there?
Oh, yes, definitely. This is getting much worse. I think it's returning to more error, brainwashing with the help of modern technology. And the kids taught to, for example, hate America and to conquer Taiwan. From very early on. That's like the first few Chinese words they would learn. That's happening now.
So again, that just makes it even harder for China's people to find freedom because they're being more and more enslaved by just the thought of what communism actually is.
Definitely, yeah. And the situation is getting worse across generation. So we are having this crisis now. For example, I was meeting here with many people from our generation yesterday in Houston. I feel like we have this connection still because our generation, we fought for freedom. We still have this hope for democratization of China. But the younger generations, for them, this is a non-issue. And even worse, the much younger ones, they grew up with this firewall and completely brainwashed, damaged. It's very sad.
We have a listener right now over on YouTube, Mr. Carlos. He says, the wife is from China, but yet she has no awareness of Tiananmen Square. But I remember the reporting back then, she is from the younger generation. So his wife from China doesn't even know about Tiananmen Square.
Yeah, I hope now, after today, they should find out more. You can always ask me if you want. And there are videos of me talking about Tiananmen, my own experience.
And my American friends, I want to say to you that be very be very alert to the CRT, critical race theory, happening in your school. That's it. Period.
Yeah, we've been talking about that.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah, a lot. It came up just yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Let me ask both of you. I'm interested in your perspective on this particular concept. Okay, so here in America, our history is being rewritten. We talked to a guest recently who discussed the 1619 Project, which seeks to redefine what the founding of the country was and what it was founded on, the principles and values and stuff like that. I understand, without having really known very much about Chinese history, but I know that the Chinese history is vast. It's very ancient.
Right.
You've had monarchies, you've had different forms of governance and that sort of thing. Do the people have an understanding of their history before communism, or is communism really the predominant concept that they have of their governance?
The second. So, CCP is the driving theme of everything, and the of course engineered the history. For example, the anti-Japanese invasion war, which CCP was basically mostly helping Japan in that, fighting against the nationalist government at that time. Now they completely changed it. And of course, the history of Christianity in China, all that they are changing. And Xi Jinping, he wants to, even now, like most recently, has this so-called research on, the history of the closing up of China, as some good example to follow. But he's completely re-engineered everything, and their belief, of course, whoever controls the past controls the future. Of course, that's what they are doing. And talking about this, I think our dream then in 1989 was definitely American democracy. I was the first speech I make on Tiananmen Square. I was comparing the Declaration of Independence against the Chinese Constitution, which basically give us no rights. I was so excited to be able to speak up. But later, I think that was evidenced in the Statute of Democracy. That's the lasting image of the protest, that it's definitely from the inspiration of the Statute of Liberty.
I see.
Wow.
Just as a follow-up question to that, I know most of the time when we hear of people wanting to change China, it's people who want a democracy. Are there any other groups or movements that would want to reestablish an emperor or monarchy or anything like that in China?
For now, that's basically what Xi Jinping is doing. And
just not a good one.
Just not a good one.
Right. Okay. Permanent leadership. Of course, the trouble is he doesn't have a male
heir.
Heir.
It's interesting. I was going to ask the question that if he gets established as permanent leader, would he try to name his successor?
Well, that's always the biggest challenge of such a regime.
He's not a young guy.
Right. There's no legitimacy, for the successor. And what happened to Mao, when he named the successor, Lin Biao, so at one moment he was like the number 2 most trusted, then next day, he died, mysterious plane crash.
Right,
That's what will happen.
Yeah, exactly, The next guy who wants power will simply connive for it. Matthew asks, is Taiwan the last surviving seed of the pre-communist China culture?
Definitely. Of course, Taiwan Taiwan, it's more complicated. There was a very strong Japan influence too. Because
really?
Japan's occupation of Taiwan for many decades.
Yeah. You go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, if this is the last chance I can speak, is from the historic perspective.
Yeah.
What are the top 3 enemies to the world peace and human dignity? North Korea, China, Russia. They're exporting missiles, human rights abusers, ideologies, and virus. Now, 1949 was a year that America could help get rid of the communist regimes, right? 1949. 40 years later, 1989, another second chance for America to help with the regimes, and failed. And then now it's 2029. Can we change that?
Thank you.
Well, we do need to wrap up here, but you reminded me of something. We also didn't help Iran when their people rose up. We sat by and watched them get oppressed by their government, and we didn't do anything to help them either. So I have not been a big fan of American foreign policy ever since, even before World War II. Our American foreign policy has always been very complicated at best, and we don't, as a people, get to vote on who gets to decide foreign policy. We vote for Congress peoples and we vote for presidents and whatever, but that doesn't change the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. It doesn't change who's actually doing the work at the State Department or who's actually doing the work at the Central Intelligence Agency. Those folks do whatever they're going to do no matter who's in office. And I think it's been a very troubling history there from an American foreign policy perspective. I think we create more monsters than we do friends.
For that, let me interject.
Yeah, please.
Mike Pompeo has my vote on that.
We've interviewed him.
Right.
Yeah, we had him on last year, I think it was, Mike Pompeo, on a very interesting character. I do want to ask, before, can I just get a couple more minutes, Adrian? One of my last question is, I wanted to ask you about safety in America. You obviously look like you're very relaxed and not worried about foreign intelligence officers from China coming to do you any harm. Are you at all worried about your safety? I mean, you've been at this now for many decades, so it seems not. But what is your opinion about China and their tentacles, so to speak, here in America, as far as your safety goes?
Yeah, I was physically attacked many times. In San Francisco. And one of our projects, the CCP virus statue, in Liberty Sculpture Park in near Los Angeles was burned down last year. This I think this has not gotten enough attention in American public. This is like the most important foreign attack on United States soil. They burned down this sculpture there, and we of course rebuild it. I'm facing this every day. I mean, of course, it's pervasive. Even my kids can sense it. But for me, the existence of it is a challenge. It's something I just must fight with. So I take great joy in conquering it, confronting it. Not flee.
Do you think the Chinese government would go so far as to assassinate Chinese citizens in America?
Of course. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think they will hesitate to do that. There were, many mysterious deaths. For example, the biographer of Mao, he died very quickly after the book was published. We never know what really happened, and. I was physically attacked by the mobs here many times, and San Francisco police was watching. They did nothing.
Really?
And I called, this was year 2008, I called all the media. Nobody cares.
Oh, wow.
One of my friend was beaten almost fatally. He was bleeding. And that's
nobody did
nothing happened. What I mentioned, last year 2020, the Zoom investigation was the only case that U.S. government did something, and now it's followed by the indictment of the spies that burned down the sculpture.
Wow.
So they are doing something now, and of course that started under Mike Pompeo.
Sure.
He started this cross government department level, cabinet level China initiative. So DOJ was in contact with the State Department on this. And that's the result.
I mean, the Chinese consulate here in Houston, they were burning documents because they were spying right out of here. I mean, and here you are in the same town. Are you at all concerned about folks from the Chinese consulate following you around?
No. I mean, I would welcome any opportunity of confronting them. To me, this is my life.
I see.
I will not be defined by fear. And that's what we are fighting against. Even for U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
A lot of people are afraid, because of business interest, because of that. Some Christians, even out of fear of not being able to travel to China to evangelize Chinese, they would kind of stay away from me. That's the situation.
Wow.
But to me, it's an honor.
Okay, for me to conclude, I must mention an American name. Right now, jailed in China, he's believed to be the longest-held American citizen, not a Chinese American, okay? Just American citizen in China right now. And your government refused to take him home. His name is Mark Swidan, MarkSwidan. He's from Houston.
Oh,
He's a Catholic.
Wow.
No kidding.
And he uses blood in prison to draw pictures to his dying mom in Houston.
Really? I had not heard of this guy.
Mark Swidan.
Mark Swidan. We'll look that up. I appreciate you sharing that with us. That's very intriguing to me. But we were out of time. We do have to say goodbye. We've gone over about a half hour here because it's just been such a great conversation. Fung Zhou, thank you for your time today. We're very grateful to you.
Thank you for having me. It's always great to be able to speak.
Praise be to God.
All these people.
Next time you're in Houston, we'd love to have you back.
Definitely.
And Jack, thanks for making the arrangements today. We're very grateful to you.
Pray for Fung Zhou's conversion to Catholicism.
Amen. Amen. Come home, my brother. The website is h-china.org. You can find more information about Humanitarian China there. God bless you. God love you. Thanks for the extended version of the after show today. Really intriguing conversation. Father Donald Calloway is our guest tomorrow. We're going to respond to that Irish priest who laments young priests in Ireland. It's dying on the vine. Why would he lament these young priests? Tune in tomorrow to find out. Until then, God bless you. God love you, and have a great day.